No. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Wareham Finance Committee meeting. Today is Thursday, October 13th. We are delayed one day. Typically, we meet on Wednesday, but we had a problem with our calendar, and so we are convening this evening. We are not live. And ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
We have Julie Moran, Gerald Stefanski, Thomas Hannon, Jody Smith, myself, Matthew Rose, Norma Scoggin, and Bernie Pitcher.
Tom Worthen will not be here this evening. He's got a prior appointment. And Dominic has a committee meeting with the Upper Cape. He's our elected representative from Wareham on that committee. So we have it in for all information he has. We'll go on our first item on our agenda, of course, is the balance of the articles that we have not yet covered. And I've asked Eric, our town administrator, to present them as appropriate. Article 1, 2, 3, and 4, primarily. And he has a
Nice to meet you,
PowerPoint.
Derek.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
I've
you.
seen you before.
I think we're gonna do the manual.
Tom, I know. Tom.
How's it going, Derek?
Good. Could you pass that down?
Thank you.
And I don't know if everybody, if you have it, I killed some trees.
You can save a tree, I've got one.
We'll keep it for posterity.
Yes.
Yeah.
I got it, yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
So this is just, they just did this out for the Board of Selectmen, so this won't be the, the PowerPoint that we used to do for town meeting. That's usually a lot more straightforward. But first, it met approximately 2 weeks ago with the Division of Local Services. So that's they're the offshoot of the Department of Revenue that works for that does the municipal work. I am concerned that this year, given everything that they have on their end and some changes about having free cash certified by this town meeting, you know, the submissions going in, and usually it's a quick turnaround, but they told us that definitely not this year, so.
Well, they've said a quick turnaround other years, and they've been consistently late and later the past 2 years, if I recall.
So it's been, yeah, so it's been a little difficult, not all on them, obviously. We've had some changeovers through some of the bigger departments in town as well, and some other things, but, so I'm a little concerned about that, but.
Is it worth doing a special town meeting at some point? Knowing the time frame to, you know,
Yeah.
advertise and all that, you know, I'll use the end of November, just for a date, you know, do something like that, so these things, you know, some things you need to be done sooner than later.
Yeah, well, some of them, there's some I've got a solution for,
Okay.
which is, it's what we've done in the past, and let me give you an example, would be the boilers for the high school. My recommendation is if we do not have free cash, we utilize the stabilization fund, with the part of it in the motion that upon certification of free cash, at the next town meeting, those funds be replenished right in there. So I think approximately 800,000, we've got about 4.5 million in the stabilization fund right now. So there's really 2 items I would suggest for that. One of the other capital items is the put money aside for street lights, because we've already done close to 1,000, converted them to LED, and we have about 660 left. So I'd like to get that conversion going, and that'll be about, plus maybe have some money set aside for some period lights, things like that. But it's about $185,000 conversion, which then you'll see, we'll get some credits back at some point, bring the total cost down to about 108. But I'd recommend we put 225,000 aside. I'd like to order street light, the period light poles, because one that went down in Onset that was destroyed during a car accident, we're still 6 months waiting on it to be fabricated. So it's, if you know, so some other issues, is sort of non sequitur. on Main Ave, you'll see in the middle, there's some cones and one of the big barrels. We were supposed to, it was taking 8 weeks for fabrication for the piping that we need in there, and they're still about 4 weeks out, they're saying now. So, you try and resolve it, fix the issue, and you need what you need for the pipe, so. It's especially ones like that, I almost feel like I wanna get that out there, cause it's such in your face every day you're seeing it,
Yeah.
so. But those are some of the frustration, that we obviously see.
So Derek, how much do you think would be certified for free cash?
It's, every time I speak to accounting at it, she threatens death upon me, so.
Well, let me rephrase this, okay?
Yes.
Let's say that we vote, the town meeting votes on these capital items, and we don't have a fix on free cash next week.
Right,
But we do have a fix on free cash in 4 weeks.
you couldn't do it, the DOR would not let
You
you.
would,
You can't appropriate out of it until you've, I know what you're saying. You'd
yeah,
have to lock down.
because they're just like 4 weeks behind. So you
Yeah.
couldn't say stabilization or free cash if proven available by the time you want to do the project.
No, they frown on creativity.
It has to be
But
cash in hand.
it would still be within,
Yeah.
prior to June 30 of this year. Is that the,
No, it would be, free cash until it's certified, it doesn't exist. So if we used a motion that said and/or, it's essentially a double appropriation, so.
okay, so it's got to exist even though it really does exist, it doesn't
exists.
exist because we didn't get
Because
that.
it's not certified.
Right until it's certified. I mean,
Yeah.
when you think about it, on June 30th, we still had $1 million plus in certified free cash that we did not utilize, because we routinely, you want to roll that over, a certain amount over. On July 1, that no longer existed by the DLS regs, so. Even though it's literally like if you have that pile of money right there, as soon as it struck 1201, it's gone.
So it's not our money anymore?
What it means is you just can't appropriate it.
Okay.
So it's,
But where does it go? If you can't appropriate it, what happens?
it's sitting in your accounts.
Okay.
So.
So you have to get it recertified?
Right.
Gotcha, okay.
So, until it's recertified, it's quite literally like it doesn't exist,
Okay.
no matter how much it's there.
It does, but we can't touch it.
Right, you can't expend it, so,
Okay.
yeah, so.
So is this what you're, and then are you really thinking that by town meeting, you're not going to have it certified?
Usually you can play a little coy on it. I don't believe this time. It's truly, it's my feeling on it, and it's, I think they're gonna have everything by Monday. But the way they're set up now, and they've changed around some of the areas that people have, and everything's changed, I don't have a good feeling, so I'd rather we have a plan B, just in case. So, if it happens, great, I've just been, I've been on my Irish pessimistic side.
So it can be either or, the article will be either or, but
Right now, I'm gonna do the article with free cash. If we don't have it, then, let me go through it just real quick to sort of explain. The first one, if you see it, is for the department. Purchase and equip. So we do purchase and equip, so you can actually buy the radios, the lights, everything. If you did just purchase, you technically wouldn't be allowed to outfit it. So you wanna always say equip, so you can get all the equipment in there. It should be, it's 7 vehicles, 5 cruisers, 2 unmarked. Normally, you wouldn't get any, you'd need a little bit more money. The unmarked are obviously cheaper than the cruisers. Cruisers are they're running between 50 and 60,000 outfitted, and, unmarked are usually more standard vehicles. At town meeting, we never say what unmarked we're buying. It's just,
Then what would be the point?
yeah. So if you look at it, we have every year in the police budget $150,000 capital line. You'll see there, There are salary and wages, expenses, and then capital of 150,000. That we've been using for capital leases for the cruisers. A capital lease is different than your normal lease in that at the end of it, you own it all right. So it's just another form of borrowing, so we don't turn them in at the end, they're our cruisers. So we do this for a 3-year period, and this is just one of the ways we keep vehicles. Alternatively, we will traditionally buy a couple more out of free cash every year as well. We want to make sure we have a base within the budget to cycle through. You know, and I don't have the numbers of how many cruisers and such we have right now, but you can move through a lot of them pretty quickly.
So,
What's your life expectancy, Derek? After 3 years, we own it.
Yeah,
Beyond that,
you're not
2
gonna
more
get
years,
much
maybe?
more, yeah, you're not gonna get much more beyond it. By the time it's almost, I think they should do engine hours instead of miles from the way
Oh, indeed.
they're run, so, yeah.
So a lot of miles, I don't know.
Yeah, so when you think about it, especially this town with the sectors that we have, and we traditionally will have maybe 4 officers out on the road at a night, and you know, that's one of the things people don't realize. If you're up in Shangri-La on a call and there's something down in Nannyment Heights, that's a 20-minute trek,
Hmm.
you know. So it's there was one day with Dave Menard that we were going to all the different places, part of snow plowing, and we did 71 miles in the town during it, just driving around. I thought that was pretty wild. So,
Yeah.
you know.
I know, yeah.
What happens once they are no longer usable to the town? Are they sold?
We trade them in. When we became a green community, you really can't pass those down anymore. We used to have, you can see some of the old ones are in our department. We had it for Board of Health and such. The unmarks we still will take because they're a little bit more fuel efficient, if you will. But we've been going now a lot with the Chevys, the Tahoes, which the price was pretty good on those, has been. Ford is coming out with all their new ones, and they're going to be more expensive than Chevy now. So we used to have when I came on board, we had the Dodge Challengers.
Yeah.
And the doors
Yeah.
fell off.
Doors fell off, the front end was rebuilt on all, it was
Blind
terrible.
spots were so bad they were getting into accidents.
Yeah, so,
You know, all the towns were going with them.
yeah,
They were the cheapest?
They were the
Yeah.
cheapest,
Yeah.
and I remember we had 2 specialized pursuit vehicles, and the old chief, and he would only allow these two officers who were assigned to them, and he said, whatever you do, don't put those into the rotation, they're specialized vehicles. And we're like, hey, we need vehicles badly, put them into the rotation. They were 2 weeks, they were in the shop, They were not set up for the different types of drivers,
Yeah.
so.
Now, the chief was then mentioning he was gonna look into electric.
That was my
Cruisers and
question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got a few of them.
Huh.
These, I imagine, it's gonna be, I really try and work with them, leave them up to their choices. Obviously, we're gonna still have the fuel ones. The public safety vehicles are exempted from the green communities, so that's, but that's why we can't pass them down. We actually, so for example, the old Tahoe that Mr. Menard had, which I think when we bought those, you could get them, they were 32,000, which was a great time to buy them. We had to write a letter about that because they said, well, it's outside of your scope of your green communities, it's just a supervisor vehicle. I said, considering he tows it, will bring stuff around, he's out and all this stuff, though, it is definitely a what do you call, emergency vehicle, so. So green community is good and bad in a way.
So not in our future real soon, I guess.
For all electric, I'd say no. you know, those vehicles go not just from point A, point B, but they're idling constantly, which isn't, you know, so.
Battery, yeah. Yeah.
So I would, you know, we're buying more and more electric or hybrid for the regular town vehicles. I'd probably like to not be the guinea pig for the police one, let somebody else, you know, make the mistakes and the wins, and we just learn from them, so.
Or just develop the technology
Right.
down the road,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely need bigger, more battery life, for sure.
It does, I mean, the new Ford Lightnings are interesting, and that's using them as a police vehicle. But those came out, when they were originally coming out, it was promised an entry level into the 30, just above 40,000 range. And actually, I put in the $100 refundable deposit for one, and then when it finally all came out, with the extended battery, with everything, you're talking a $70,000 vehicle. I said,
Yeah,
well, stick with the Prius.
So I didn't hear that number, I heard the $80,000.
Yeah, so it was,
Yeah.
then the other thing that ticked me off was while they're waiting, they said, well, pricing's coming out, and we've got everybody on a list, and instead of going by who signed up, who's ever willing to pay $5,000 over the MSRP, you'll now be on the new list. I didn't appreciate that. No.
He's better off waiting for the technology. I think there'll eventually be cells,
They will,
Yeah,
and when that happens, it'll make more sense.
it will, just the, you know, it's gonna be interesting what happens with all the, you know, the leftover batteries now, the lithium-ion, everything,
It's a big
where's it
problem.
going?
big, big.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I haven't thought this all the way through.
yeah, you know, that's,
Waste.
you know, Fire's talked about it, where essentially with some of the vehicles now, there's two different setups. One is where they'll take a forklift and pick up the vehicle and dump them into basically a container while they're going, and then smother them with either sand or water, you know, or you can sort of put something around it and then smother, but all you can do is smother it, so. So that one can go forward no matter what, because it's part of their annual budget. So what we'll be seeking is $450,000 over the 3 years. $450,000 is the cost of the vehicles plus the interest credit. I'm estimating around 4.5%, so it's not as, you know, obviously when we were in the twos, it was much better for it. But, so you could get interest payments of close to 20,000 on this, bringing it down to about 430. But it's still, it gives us the vehicles in a 3-year changeover.
And this is just basically an informational thing in the sense that it's in their budget line item.
It's in their budget already, so that budget's already been approved. We need the approval of to actually purchase them. And we're just showing it's no extra money, because that's our plan for the next 3 years. Next item is the Inspectional Services vehicles. They have the white pickups that are out back, if you've seen them, 2005. They've had a good life for us. We've had some of the rusting, I think if you look, you'll see these black sections on the bottom. That's where they've welded plates back on there, and it's just time. And I think one of the ways to describe it is, you know, there's a whole generation when you go like this, doesn't know what you're trying to ask them to do. You can actually still, those still wind down on it. So.
Now, the fuel efficiency, are they being hybrids?
Yeah, so what the director had asked for was sort of a specific one, because he was targeting off of the state bid list, which really doesn't matter, because they tell you we don't have any more in stock. But they had looked at the all-wheel drive hybrid RAV4, which on the bid list was about $28,500, believe it or not.
It's a good price.
It's a good price.
I bought RAV 2020, it's less than what I paid then.
So we'll see if we can get them for that.
Get them.
Yeah, so that's why I've put 100,000, and there's an existing article out there with 20,000 in it to purchase a vehicle beforehand that I think I could use as a contingency in case they came in. I'd like to see one full electric vehicle on it, all-wheel drive.
Yeah.
We also, we're gonna search some grants out because we have to expand the, what we have for, charging stations. We'd also like to set up some charging stations down on Main Street and such, so that the charge point style. And just use that as an attraction, cause if you see at the Nuria across from, from
Yeah.
Walmart, they have two there. And I've been watching and they're always filled up, which, makes sense. It'd be a nice way to get those to attract somebody, just to stay some time on our Main Street and go to some of the restaurants or something.
So Derek, is it federal or state money, do you think, for that?
Well, it'd be the state money is
Okay.
really what we'd be seeing
Okay.
from, but there are some other federal that's
Yeah,
out
there are.
there as well, so.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is federal money that's funneled through the
Right,
states,
states, yeah, yeah.
so,
Okay,
so.
so you'd be looking at that.
Consumer Report came out today, and they're recommending hybrids over the electrics.
Yeah, it's interesting, mine's a plug-in hybrid. So I only get 25 miles, but it's allowed me to commute back and forth. I'm averaging a little over 70 miles per gallon. Yeah, so it's made it effective. And when I bought that, what was interesting was that there was a $7,500 tax credit plus another one from the Commonwealth, which brought that down to about $20,000 when everything was said and done, which was a no-brainer for me.
And I refer to the fact that how cheap it is to run, and not compared to the electric cost or the gas cost, but overall, you're getting so many miles to the gallon.
Yeah, and the other thing I like to do, because I make up my own rules, is that I don't go on their oil change when they recommend it, because I say, there's a whole bunch where I'm electric, so I think that's based on the old models. It's, I think I've skipped one or two there, at least that's my excuse.
So where does the money come from for the inspectional vehicles?
That would have to be free cash. I'm going back and forth because it's, as much as I'm willing to do it, I don't like to touch the stabilization fund. I'm a little worried about those passing inspection again for the list. But I would like to hold off at the risk of getting punched by our Director of Inspectional Services. I'd like to hold off until spring if we don't have free cash for it.
Did they give you any hint on lead time? How far out are we?
They would have preferred to have gotten it way ahead of time, but what they wanted to make sure was that our submissions were quote unquote clean, because when they have to unlock and do certain things, it's now an electric setup, means it resets everything for them, and it used to be able that you could basically shove all the stuff at them, and they'd go through and say, hey, correct this, or that, hey, I noticed this, or something that they, so. I think they would have liked to have had it been done with it about a week ago, so. Yeah.
Was there a reason that it was later than usual?
There was just, we're less a few people on our end. We're cleaning up a few old matters and things such as that, so it's, I think our staff has done everything. It's just sometimes things take a lot longer, so it's, I'd like to thank the accounting staff, because we had somebody out for a long time, and they actually kept on working while through something when most people were just taking the time off, so. So it's hard to yell about that.
Yeah.
Tough times.
Yeah, it sure is.
Municipal maintenance, this is the upgrade, repair, replace street lights and period lights, that's $225,000. Just given what we can get for the incentives now, that I recommend that we go with those. And the neat thing about these lights, we're getting a reimbursement for it. Instead of the traditional cells on top, there's one now that you can do with a timer with about 10 p.m. it dims them about 30%. So, and the normal eye can't see the difference. But not only does it save you a little bit of money, but it's supposed to be better for either if it's going into your house for sleeping and some of the animals as well.
When it says wildlife, you mentioned that the selectmen's
Yeah,
meeting, I
so-
kinda laughed.
Well,
Yeah, it's true, I never thought of it, it's,
So, no, I like the LEDs because they're more of a straight. They're for when it comes to light pollution, they're sort of the up down.
Yeah, they've been able to aim those.
Yeah, and they have some of the lines that they put on the side too. And so that's what we've asked for the people that were, some of them that were taking them out and on set, they were either unscrewing them or smashing because they didn't like them going into their house.
Oh, jeez.
Let us know, and we'll put the shade right there. Please don't do that.
And you replace the period lights. I remember you used to take the heat for those lights, couldn't be fixed because they weren't made for the salt atmosphere.
What is,
Yeah.
yeah.
David would try to fix them and they'd wait for parts and whatever, and then they weren't available.
We actually hired somebody specifically just to redo them, take them apart, and it was cheaper than to get the parts. And it wasn't just cheaper, it was time-wise, you could actually get them, so about 30 of those were redone, I think, by that Black Cat Lantern Company, which only basically, I think they only came into existence to do our work up there. So just look at, and that's why I've kept the capital plan pretty light. You can see this for a fall town meeting, and so the total 450,000 would be the borrowing that we're requesting, then free cash 325,000 if that were to exist. If no free cash, it would be 225,000 from the stabilization fund. One of the other reasons too, I was just thinking about is I think there's gonna be a lot of sticker shock at this town meeting for residents between the sewer and the police articles. So,
Oh, yes.
not police, school.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I'll let Jimmy go up and explain that.
yeah. I'll be behind them, way behind. This would be if we add free cash, is usually what we do with the transfer of free cash. And this would be to the Plymouth County Other Post-Employment Benefits Trust Fund. Putting the 300,000 aside it's part of the plan. We have about $1 million in there right now. That's gonna fluctuate because of the investments. They can invest a little bit more, less stable, if you will, in other words, so they can go more into equities, things such as that, which you can't with the stabilization fund. But just looking at it, our OPEB liability's over 100 million now, so part of what we're doing here is setting the money aside, and it is showing, from the DOR to the auditors to the bond companies that at least we're considering this and putting it aside. We have the potential of a policy that when our retirement obligation is done, sort of that you'll have the catch-up will almost be over, so about 2030 or so. At that point, you'll go from probably paying should hit about the 8 million mark for the Plymouth County retirement, should go down to about 2 million or so. So if you really wanted to, and you wanted to, at the next, it'd probably take you about maybe 10, 15 years thereafter. If you put all that money, that same amount, didn't change it, put the 6 million aside over the next 10 years or so, you'd fully fund your OPEB liability as well, but.
I think you proposed at the town meeting, they bought into it last year, the year before.
Yeah, we've talked about that, it's, so let's say, we use the fast forward machine at 7, 8 years ahead. I'm going to assume there's going to be a lot of pressing needs to utilize that delta. And just depending on what we've got, what the markets look like for the next few years will dictate whether you're going beyond 2030, because they've always kept on pushing that. So I think it's the right thing to do with the Plymouth County OPEB. One of the reasons I like to use free cash is I don't think it should be in our operating budget, because it was one of the things when we used to put money from the stabilization fund, I looked at, I said, we were cutting positions, we're putting money into the stabilization fund from the operating budget just to balance the budget. I thought it made sense to use your free cash, and by the finance committee worked with myself and the board of selectmen at that time when we came up with the free cash policy to fund the stabilization fund. It went from approximately 400,000 to about 4.5 million now, and that's been one of the big things.
This is a great thing that the town, you're doing, the town is doing, is funding this post-employee benefits. Yeah, I mean, you gotta be one of the few, not one of the few, but very, very small number of towns in Massachusetts are funding their, I mean, as well as Wareham is.
Yeah, I mean, there's some of the communities that have really gone hog wild, which they can, you know.
Yeah.
So, but there's, you know, especially for a town like ours, that I think, you know, we're pretty lean on a lot of the stuff to go into it. I think it's the right thing to do. So.
Definitely.
Well, the political thing to do would be kick the can down the road.
Would be the smart thing to do, wouldn't it, Bernie?
It would look good, it would look good.
Next item would be the stabilization fund. About 150,000 will keep us. You want to have about 3 to 5% of your operating budget. As I was saying at the selectmen's meeting, it's probably really moving towards 7, 8, 10%. Some of the places, but consider us roughly an $80 million budget. So at 4.5 million, we're right in the wheelhouse. I think you should put some money in there, and we're finally getting interest on stabilization fund of about 1% or a little bit more. So that you'll get 45,000 a year. So that puts you right about 200,000, which keeps us.
Right now, for a 4-week T-bill, you're getting 2.9%. Can you stand? And that's the best of the best.
Sure
Yeah.
is.
So, we picked up 10,000 of those treasury that are based on inflation when those are
Chips.
opened up.
Yeah.
It'll be the only good investment I have for the next year or two. So the stabilization fund, emergency management, that's to be used in an emergency, or even just getting some of the emergency supplies and stuff. So for example, like we just had the Harvest Moon Festival. We were able to pick up some of the those water filling barriers that can be utilized and moved around pretty quickly. So it's stuff like that. It's the event of an emergency. We don't want to have to worry about appropriations or where you're spending from, and it's just smart to have it set aside.
There's a new fund.
Yeah, so there are like tax title properties. So when we're cleaning things up, when we've gone to other properties, that's all coming out of municipal maintenance budget. And I can only, hit Dave so many times, before the well runs dry. But it's other things when we need to hire or do something for some of these properties to clean it up. It's, well, what are we gonna do? Wait 6 months for town meeting? I mean, I come to the finance committee for a reserve fund transfer, but what if there's another emergency? I just think some of these it's the way it should be, to have those funds aside, because cleaning that up is good for the town as a whole, and some of them you end up taking them and you can auction them off, so.
So these are pre-taking, or pre-tax title taking,
Right, so we
Yeah.
haven't, and some of them, whether you're cleaning up or if we have to get some.
securing
sort of-
them, boarding
Right.
up, whatever,
Yeah,
okay.
so we usually, for our tax sale properties, we usually, once we've gone through foreclosed or redemption period, the attorney that we use, which is Peter Brown, he's Coast Firm,
Sure.
he gets
okay.
paid out of, after the auction, he gets paid his amount, they're not paid, ahead of time, but there's always costs for us ahead of time. It's, you're cleaning all the trash out.
Yep, trash outs, sure.
It's, I think we spent $30 on air freshener or something the last one, you know, so. Yeah, it's a nice
Well, it's
pine
unfortunate
fresh.
for the homeowners, but it is something that needs to happen,
Yeah,
yeah,
so
move
it's,
forward with that.
you know, for us, I'd rather it gets cleaned up and, you know, something could happen. There's been some sad ones, there's been the town employees and their families' houses that it's gone through, you know, so.
And this just provides some flexibility.
It provides some flexibility if you have to do something, whether it's, you know, from cutting to cleaning.
Mhm.
If I have to order an appraisal on a property, it's $5,000, my budget's $9,000, you know?
Yeah,
It's
sure.
doesn't.
So a lot of it ends up being emergency stuff, boarding up and
Yeah,
securing and, yeah, sure.
yeah, and as we're taking and working on some of these, you have some extreme cases, like you'll see, like the one on Wareham Ave with all the junk on there, so how are you going to pay and do some things like that? So, and there might be some extraordinary legal matters that need to be handled, so it just makes sense to have it.
Sure.
Oh, indeed, because all that effort enhances the value,
you know.
Mhm.
even if it's only $1,000.
It stops it from declining,
Mhm.
right, yeah, perhaps, yeah.
And you can even see it, because the school they cleaned out up there, David's crew was
Yeah.
up there, took all the trees out, the shrubs and everything. It
Yeah.
looked great and it went fine.
Yeah.
And how many months ago, and now it's returning to its original.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there was two things, 'cause I felt badly, while we still had it, the grass grew and Dave thought we had sold it, so the buyer, Jerome was a little ticked off at us, so I was like, I think I almost owe him a mowing for it. You know? Maybe I can tell Dave to go over and clean it up for old time's sake. General insurance budget line, this is one of the ones I'm a little bit, in trouble on that one, because when we got the final Maya bill, since Deacon's did not come off, and we had the full school building over there, it's the first time they actually charged us for it. It was about 96,000 more than we'd anticipated, so we have some money set aside. You know, I could pay up to about 50 of it, but then I wouldn't be able to pay deductibles or anything else. So I've held off on paying you know, we've paid the majority of their bill and still demanded we get the prepayment discount on it, which they're honoring. So we're a little bit in trouble on that one, so if worse comes to worse, I may just have to come for a reserve transfer, even though we don't really have enough to reach the 100, so that's the one I would be concerned about, as I just.
I'll see, we'd be able to help you better if you would appropriate into the finance committee another 50,000.
See, there's yeah, lessons learned, Bernie.
What unfortunately the public doesn't really understand is on the municipal side, or your side, you're picking up a lot of costs from the school system.
Yeah.
It shows up in your budget, you have to account for, and yet they're over there spending money like crazy, as we say, and $40 million with grants and all, and they don't pay for insurance, they don't pay for this, they don't pay for that. But every 1,000 that adds, we have to reduce something over here in the municipal to pay for it.
Yeah, and even when you look at every new vehicle, it's going to be roughly $500 change, right? So if I get 10 new vehicles, I need an additional 5,000 in my insurance line. Yeah, so those are always the things you're trying to track and figure out. Our deductible's still 5,000, I believe, as well. We looked at changing it and going back and forth, but the cost benefit just didn't make sense. We're lucky our workers' comp has been going down, and outside really of this change, because it's a change in valuation, right? It's not anything extra they've tacked on, it's covering the value of that school. We'd had where they didn't increase us over 2% for, I think we had 3 years, and one was actually a little negative for their main lines, so. Workers' comp had been spiking during that time, but, you know, with the trainings from Doreen and everything that's been going on, it's worked out pretty well, so. So that'd be a total of $750,000. And, you know, long story short, Jerry, do I think we would have enough money to pay the $750, pay the $800, and the other things for capital with free cash. I'm assuming a certain amount, and I think we're well within that, our wheelhouse. I always wanna have about 3 to 5% at least, it's always the goal.
So, say if free cash is not certified.
Yeah.
Where will you take some of these monies out of the stabilization?
I wouldn't be able to touch this because of the way it's phrased. This article was based on free cash.
Okay,
So,
so that's,
Yeah, I'm sorry, DOA, I'm doing anything.
so if you don't hear, then just this article goes away?
Right, we would pass over the.
Pass over,
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah. So, you know, when thinking about the votes, my request would be just basing it on the merits, as if you had free cash, and if we're passing it over, you know, then it's just, hey, that's the reason, you know. I really don't think we need a special town meeting to cover really anything
So,
from it.
If, then the stabilization fund, you said that you could take, from Article 1, you could take, or you would be able to take out for the inspectional and municipal maintenance. You said you might be able to take that out of stabilization if you,
Municipal maintenance, I definitely could,
Yeah.
just because this article is worded from available funds.
okay.
Stabilization fund is considered an available fund.
All right.
That's why I usually list, you know, just the different payments. You know, obviously I couldn't use this article to pay for the insurance because it's capital, so. The police had been asking for some additional tasers in the amount of 30,000, which I'm trying not to load this up with stuff if it's not going to happen as well.
Didn't we just put some in the spring meeting?
Yeah, you're gonna keep on going through with the horses.
They still need more.
Yeah, and then we're going to be getting some new hires in as well, so.
Are they replacements, new hires adding to the force at least,
Yeah,
over and above?
we're having some people that are cycling out, and we're trying to get some new people in there.
Okay, so they're just replacing
Yeah,
officers
Which
we have.
I thought their budget already had room,
Yeah.
wiggle room for that, okay.
yeah, so, we're, you know, I don't think it's gonna catch up really, if you will.
No.
They have thought about, I've been having the chief and EXL put something together for the Board of Selectmen on basically, you wouldn't call it the impact team's wrong, almost a community response team, but where we've funded out of the Arpa funding for about 3 years, try and build it into the budget during those 3 years, and that's a team that just doesn't go into the shift rotation. They're responding to certain things during the day and get more as part of the community. If you needed somebody for certain things, that would be that team. I thought that'd be really
Almost
good.
like not really a SWAT team, as you say,
Yeah.
but just strategically to jump in.
Right,
Yeah.
so let's say you did need somebody for and I'm gonna sound TV cliche, but stakeout, or if there's a house that's a problem, would be nice to have, you know, just a cruiser or somebody in that area. If there's something that's happened that can be pretty traumatic to people, it would be nice to have somebody following up in person, checking and doing those types of things. So it's, you know, given what policing's becoming more today, and we are pretty reactive in that when you see our size and how spread out the town is, so as they're dashing back and forth to each and every incident, it's nice to have something that's just sort of steady and can respond to some of the issues that maybe, you know, you wouldn't have time to follow up and just the way they, you know, they have to operate right now.
Because when you have, even if there were an incident, excuse me, in order for him to have backup, he has to take someone out of another patrol area
Yeah.
to come over with, let's say, this group, and you're still maintaining your level of surveillance on.
Yeah, and it's, see, one of the reasons I don't say no to the community impact team, because I don't, we're not, it's not the people coming in to kick down the doors and
Mhm.
stuff, it's to be a positive impact on
Sure.
the community, and it's, you know, as policing sort of changing, you also wanna get away from sort of the vision of RoboCop, if you will, and have them be part of and known throughout the
This
community.
would be the social service aspect that is creeping into policing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, I mean, when you look at it, and it's what I thought of with this, of the Arpa funding and the Commonwealth had for extra funds. One of the worst things we've seen, the biggest cost to the community, was when they closed down the mental health hospitals. Because it just pushed the burden onto all the communities individually. So this, I looked at, this would be the time with you know, the funds would be to recreate that bureaucracy, which is hard to, but you know, you've got old hospitals that have shut down or things that it would be, or at least establish something through the Commonwealth that could help offset it, because that's, you know, our officers, which I believe Massachusetts are some of the highly best trained officers in the entire nation. You know, but what they have to go through and having to work with mental health issues, you know. Our former chief got a letter from somebody that said, "Thank you for not killing me," and it wasn't facetious. He had a loaded gun, and he was upset and in a bad frame of mind, and, you know, he said the chief had every right to, because he was threatening with it, so. You know, it's a lot of stuff they go through.
I know I have 3 in my family, and they're different than now than when I first met them over 30 years ago.
So,
Not to get too far off track though, but policing is changing so much, you just gotta be so careful. Just look at the last couple of days.
yeah,
Terrible.
It's scary.
And you alluded to not having those services anymore, because they pushed them all out onto the streets, and they had an incident in which they would have used those services, and they couldn't find a bed for the guy.
yeah.
That's a typical
And
problem.
Yeah,
Right.
it's really
Bridgewater wouldn't
serious
take them,
problem.
even the county jails wouldn't take them.
Well, it's not just, it's not just when you're that point. Right now, if your family member, your child needs mental health, needs help from mental health counselor, you cannot get one. They're booked. So where is that instant? I mean, that's when we talked about the 988 signs for, which is sort of, if you're in crisis, you're feeling suicidal, that's the number to dial, because there's, you know, where is the help? When my oldest daughter to get diagnosed, she's high functioning autism, it was to wait 6 months, and then you have to go through, and this poor kid was getting bounced out of daycares because she, you know, just the way she was, so it was crazy. So it doesn't matter whether you're, you know, what spectrum of the finances you're on, you know, whether it's just unavailable,
Yeah.
so.
There's not enough people. Yeah,
Mhm.
a lot of therapists have opted out of it, and gone a different direction, and a lot of burnout because of, since COVID especially, the last few years, so.
And Mass
It's a
Health
real
and
problem.
insurance reimbursement rates are horrible.
Well, you look at the payment for some of them, you've got somebody with a PhD, 40, 50,000 in some cases, you know, it's laughable, right?
Yeah,
Is
it's-
it?
yeah.
Yeah, my daughter, she's got her master's and she went into a different direction because of the compensation, it just wasn't even, just wasn't comparable.
Reimbursement rates are horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, my wife got out of nursing just recently because it just got too dangerous.
Yeah.
And she was in a sensitive area. I mean, she was a detox nurse by trade and, you know, different substance abuse and stuff. And it just, and she's worked in prisons.
Mhm.
Working in a hospital was a lot more dangerous than it was working in a prison.
When you think about it, what they had to do
It's
with
scary.
Toby was create certain sections for,
Yeah?
you know, setting aside for an areas for our police or to bring, because
Yeah.
you know, when you had people with the issues, whether it was drug, mental health, or, you know, just a bad guy that's in there, you know, and then somebody's waiting while a loved one's having an operation or something, that's what they're listening to or right next to, it's sort of horrible.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just bad people.
Yeah, oh, there's bad people.
Yeah, that's what I say, you know, it's not always, you know, some kind of disorder or something, so it's just bad people.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the thing you gotta be careful of, you know, it's,
Okay, let's move on now to Article 4, which is housekeeping.
Yep.
And I believe there's been conversations with Margaret, our moderator, that there's gonna be a number of these articles that are gonna be on a consent agenda. And this obviously is one of them
Yeah.
that qualifies, certainly.
Yeah, so that's our semi-annual, and that's I wrote in there, the Public Educational Government Access Channel, so if people understand PEG that's what it stands
Yeah.
for, so.
Now, this is 280, 2.8, so it's about 5 something for the year. And like Bob over there who's falling asleep, but watching his little red light on the camera, that's supplied by WCTV.
Yeah.
A lot of the electronics we have around here are supplied by the TV. And they do town meeting, and they all the electronics for town meeting, because it's gonna take place at the Wareham Elementary for the cafetorium, that's all Wareham TV equipment, like they're bringing in there.
Yeah, so that's, you know, from filming things throughout the community to what they do at the school department, and I think they've got somebody dedicated over there as well, so it's, you know.
Got a lot of money, a lot of bang for our buck for that.
Sure did.
So lucky we have 2 cable companies in town.
Article 5, there's two unions, it's not been, I need a vote out of them, but I expect them to go forward. And just so you know, this would be, we have the funds within the town budget to go back, because these would be retro back to July 1, and we still have the, what do you call it, the collective bargaining stabilization other fund with the article for 200,000, which we can hit against on any of these.
Yeah.
So
what 2 contracts would these be?
I'd rather they vote before I
Okay,
say it.
no problem. Are there many more that need to be resolved?
Yeah, we have some that are offset. I still need to resolve the PD. We've already done both steel workers. We need to, so the ones that are standing are laborers, clerical, PD. The sergeants and lieutenants are off-cycle. Librarians, that's a union of 3. I think the foremans, we still need to go through, but there might be some change in how they're set up, so, yeah, there's a bunch.
The school
EMS as well.
still has a bunch.
Yeah, the school has a bunch. EMS as well, which is one, so they're paid through the offset receipt, but.
School contract, they're being noisy over there.
Yeah, so.
In the,
Are these all retroactive to 7/1?
They were, yeah, so everything, so when we build the budget as well, you try and put at least, we put about 2% on those, plus projected some steps and maybe people wouldn't have, so I tried to build it all within there. And, you know, usually you'll also be all set if you have, some of the bigger departments, if somebody's, you lose somebody for a certain period of time or something. So nothing's, you know, nothing's been outlandish versus what we're seeing, so.
I believe the only other one we have is Article 20, which was the CMW regional contract.
Yeah, so this used to be the Carver Marion Wareham Regional Refuse Disposal District. Back, the district owned actually had a landfill, and then where a transfer station is today, they ran that transfer station. And this goes many years back. Back then when CMAS was coming in, there was a contract with them, so it was, the towns got to deposit for free at CMAS, which is why trash disposal was so cheap. And you know, you basically paid next to nothing for a sticker, and any of the trash companies in town, the haulers, were disposing over at CMAS for, I think they ended up having to pay $25 a ton, which those monies went back to the town actually at that point. So when that agreement went by the wayside, you know, there was no extending that. CMAS wasn't going to give free trash beyond that. The only one that still has that is Rochester, because they were the host community. So had Wareham been the host community, we would still get it, but they unfortunately went just beyond the border, so we still get some of the impacts, but not the subsidy.
When you refer to the landfill, is that the big landfill above Makepeace's
Yeah,
property?
so that's
They
what
put
it is.
solar panels on that.
They did look into that, but you, considering, so Makepeace actually owns that property. There's an agreement which put the landfill over it, and there's, you'll see in here, there's also, there's money set aside for capping. There's also a $10 million insurance policy for any leakage, things such as that, so. A lot of liabilities on here. When Marion left, because they went to do their own thing, we still retain this as well as Carver. Marion was not completely, I don't think they were absolved of any of the liabilities, you know, the way it was set up, because if you know anything from the EPA, when you go back in time, they'll hit every single owner for, yeah, so. So this is simply, so what is this? This is just saying, hey, we've got this skeleton of a district, right? The district owns the property in Carver, in Rochester that they rent to us for $100 a year. So it's really, there's nothing, and that's how Carver residents get to use the landfill. We charge them our transfer station, they're allowed to buy a sticker. They have a $20 upcharge for them, and then they can buy that trash bag just like us. So the $20 is our administrative. So just going through, there's you know, they still have some cash assets and such, so they're putting money aside because their employees actually were considered municipal employees, not by the town, but their own district, so they've got a couple retirees, so they're paying for those, and some OPEB liability for them. There's gonna be enough money to cover that because they're putting $150,000 into their OPEB fund, and then there's one person at about you know, $278 a month being the liability cost here.
Yeah.
You know, and they're covering, you know, 75, 25, you'll be okay with 150,000.
Works.
We got some of the equipment out of it as well.
So when there's a final disbursement of the assets, will be reduced by that equipment amount, which was $24,000, which was actually a Caterpillar that, you know what? Yeah, I think it's the best investment we made because of the shortage of that.
That piece of equipment's probably 50K now,
Yeah.
so.
Probably sell it for a
Yeah,
lot,
so, so this is just basically saying, and then at the end of it, when the funds would be dispersed, it'd be based on the EQV, which is the equalized valuations, which is the formula that, the Department of Revenue and the DLS uses to calculate your state aid and some of your funds. It's based off of your land wealth, which we are high in the land wealth. And then the income, residential income, we're very low in the residential income, so,
Three.
yeah, so it actually worked out well for us on the equalized valuations of EQV.
Anything else? On some of the other articles that we've already covered, though, the impact of the school department borrowing for the boilers and the roof, will that significantly impact our borrowing costs?
So the roof, let's split it up into two phases,
Yeah,
right? We'll do the initial one that's on this town meeting, 1.5 million. So you're borrowing that for 20 years. So on the pure principal payment, that's 75,000 a year. You'll probably be looking at between 4.5% on that bond. So you figure about 60,000 to 65,000 year one. That will, so you'd be looking about 135 or what have you, to right off the bat. And that'll just, that'll decline every year by about 5,000 as you're paying off the principal. Then it's just the way those bonds work. So, it's going to eat into what we're obviously we had hoped to use for other borrowing. Obviously, as some things are way off. So I would say the impact for that initial one, the 1.5 million, would be, I'd say, easily call it 150,000. You will be charged, so they want to start it in FY '23 in the summer, so the summer going in between FY. So you'd have short-term borrowing. We probably wouldn't see the budgetary impact to FY '24. Now the remainder of that, right? So it's an $8 million project. They were saying about 5.3, 5.4.
Yes.
We're taking the 1.5 out, but it still could be 7.5 because escalators, things such as that. It's you can call it or 6 million pretty easily. I think you got to do a debt exclusion on there because looking at that, that's now 4 times the 150. That's a $600,000 payment annually for us. So that's not small.
Yeah, it's big.
And it's a hard sell because they're not reimbursable. Most of the sections over there would suggest they're not 30 years old yet.
Yeah.
Right, and that's why I looked at it, I said, when speaking to them, when it came up, I didn't, and this is probably a weird term to use, I did not think it was fair to spring it on the taxpayers at this point with everything going on. Plus, you wouldn't be able to do a debt exclusion until the spring, so it would be a useless vote. The selectmen are going to have to, we're going to have to request they put it on the spring ballot as a debt exclusion. There's no guarantee that will happen. That's why getting the part that's really leaking right now is the key to it.
Yeah.
So it's,
And the only other one that I'm expressing my own views now, the WPCF borrowing $6 million, that's coming from their rates, I know, but it's an enterprise fund. Won't they eventually be starting to borrow?
yeah, I mean.
It's just the beginning, too.
Yeah, so that's the engineering costs, and this is kind of, so the enterprise fund version of free cash is retained earnings. They won't have their retained earnings until we have the free cash as well. So they're borrowing on these $6 million worth of items, which you can't go to the SRF funding for, because they won't do it for engineering. SRF funding's at a 2% right now from the state revolving fund. And so their funding, which allows for principal reduction as well when you have, we're ineligible. And some of the SRF funding, some of they were talking about, could go as low as 0% on it, which means it's a no-brainer.
Right.
But at a 4.5% market rate to borrow for $6 million for engineering, it's not my druthers, so I wouldn't recommend it. Looked at it real quick, if, at the EDU rates today, if they borrowed the $60 million chunk that they're talking about things, you've essentially doubled your EDU rate at that point. That would be the same amount of borrowing cost. I think it'd be, $560 or something, so when you think about 600 something, you're right around there, which, believe it or not, 1,000 to 1,100 annually is probably pretty close to what some other places are paying. But you're stuck then. How do you go beyond that? How do you can't keep on going to the residents and asking them for more and more and more. Yet this is necessary, a lot of it.
And if that's assuming that it's even 60 million,
Yeah.
it's gonna be higher.
And the one negative thing, well, there's other negatives, but all this funding pouring in from ARPA specifically towards wastewater and such, what happens when you flood a market? The costs artificially rise. So I'd say the value of the funding we've gotten is maybe a third of what it would have been, elsewise. So very grateful to get it, but at the same time, it's, if you can find somebody to do the work, they're bidding it way up, and it's not just material cost, so.
Yeah, because we have one article that rescinds the 3 million, because they went up to 6 million on the RFPs.
Yeah. So, and I think that one actually came in closer to 4.5 or such. But when they finally go through and bid it again, see if we can do it at 5. You couldn't use, in order to use the Plymouth County ARPA fund appropriations, you need a town meeting vote. So town meeting did authorize that, but did not authorize it for enough, so you couldn't offset that $1.5 million difference. What you can do is something like the Narrows project is, we can take about once it's voted, we can use about 1.1 million on that, so you're borrowing less on the overall, so.
I'm surprised they don't use more of their retained earnings to defray some of this cost, to defray some of the cost.
Yeah, and well, just remember, retained earnings is finite as well, so once you build it in, that disappears. But I agree, you wanna try and knock off as much of that as possible before you're pushing it down to borrowing.
Because they got the 6 million from the ratepayers, and now they're asking for more money from the ratepayers to pay off this money that they have plenty of, possibly.
Yeah, I can see how it would be, it's good to have cash reserves,
Indeed.
a big into, but having too much isn't, we get accused of having too much, and I tell folks, look, when we didn't know what we were going to have for COVID-19 for the state aid, we were able to put 600,000 into the budget, no problem, with the Stabilization Fund, so that we didn't have to artificially cut more positions and such. Then you just put that money right back in. It's a great thing to have, and you get the feeling as the economy is going to change, there's going to be a big push to try and expend and not replenish those. So.
But they're trading closely in their retained earnings level with having to return it back to the ratepayers, because they're an enterprise fund.
Yeah, so it's, the dangerous thing about the enterprise fund from the general government position is, if the enterprise fund overborrows, let's say, can't pay their bills, we need to make it up. So it's, at the end of the day, they would reduce our free cash, or we would be hit on it. So that's, so as much as they're autonomous, any sins they commit can fall back on this end.
Like the
So,
schools.
yeah, so.
And any other questions? Anything?
Just on the water treatment, right? So my brother-in-law's, this is what he does for a living. So he was explaining to me that basically, you know, that we had the big, and I don't know all the acronyms, so you guys, you're talking in a lot of acronyms right now, and I'm just kind of like learning here a little bit, you know.
Exactly.
So he was explaining that that's, you know, with the infrastructure bill that passed, that it was meant for projects like this. And that we should have somebody focused on getting that money from the government. So that we don't have to, so that the taxpayers, the town won't have to pay it, it's gonna get, that's what it was meant for in these type of projects. So
Right.
when you're talking about it's Arpa, that's,
Right, the Arpa funding, so what happened is you got an allocation and it came through Plymouth County to
Mhm.
us. So they have to basically certify. Yeah, this is the one which is which is strict, you can use it for wastewater, stormwater, broadband, they loosened it up a bunch on it as well. You could use it for, you know, if you wanted to, the water districts, and I'd be shot if I tried to give money to the districts. So when you're looking at that, there's 4.4 million, right? So mine has been to give 1.1 to the water pollution control. There's municipal maintenance, about 1.1 for stormwater. There's one project that's gonna run us about 800,000. And these would have to be voted on the selectmen, but there's some tourism and some aspects like that that I think should be a part of it. Some nonprofit, potentially if we have to outfit the Deacon's school, you could put something towards that. So now there's additional funds that the Commonwealth got, which is, and there's the, I can't remember the acronym for bill, but there's money set aside where some of the billions they got from the federal government has to go towards this, but it's going through the state revolving fund loans. So you have to apply for that loan, and now the 49% of the money that the Commonwealth got has to go to offset it for certain justice communities, which we are one of them, and we're tier 3. And it's not just the justice, but just based on our socioeconomic status. So, you know, when they're putting in, they're gonna put in for some of these projects, the non-engineering portion, that's when you can go towards the SRF funding. We actually had a meeting with Mass DEP and some of the other today on another thing, but this was what they were talking about. So, you know, you can get some principal forgiveness and some of those other things, but as to a $60 million magic wand, well, there's money out there and it's going through, but.
Yeah, that's what Keating was saying. There's that, but then it's looking at the culvert project. Do we get money for a culvert? Almost you have to break it up. The other thing they told me is that come November, there's a federal bill for underserved broadband.
Right.
And it was interesting listening to it telling me about Barnstable County, who just have made it their business to get on that map, get on this map, get recognized.
Yeah.
And so I'm gonna try to learn a little bit more to bring to this group.
Yeah, the
How
county
do you do it?
commission is, my brother used to work for the county and.
And very effective.
Yeah, so the county commission is also one of the most hated organizations out there, if you're a developer especially, so.
I bet.
So yeah, there's a lot, and then sort of our version from that isn't Plymouth County, it's Serped, which does a lot of our regional work, which
Right.
Selectman Slavin is, you know, he's been a leader in that for a while.
Which is great,
so.
yeah.
Uh,
So So now it's just tracking it down and, yeah,
It's
accessing
tracking
it.
it, making sure, trying to get to to almost that shovel ready so that you can go in there, and it's, so one of the funny things that's, when I look at it, it's, why do the wealthier communities sometimes do this better? Because they can hire the extra staff to go
Yeah.
and attack
Yeah.
it left and right, you
Right.
know? And they're not having people wear 3, 4 hats.
Right.
you know,
Exactly,
so,
and that's really what he was saying.
yeah.
You've got 6 PhDs on this town and on the Cape committees, and, yeah, they're doing all the engineering, they're like, you don't need to hire someone, we can do it.
Yeah,
Like,
so,
oh, in our dreams, right?
so, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, look at it,
Yeah.
it's, so, Sandwich, Falmouth, full engineering divisions within the town,
Chatham.
which is, yeah, which is what we should have. Yeah, we absolutely should have,
Sustainability officers,
yeah,
Yeah.
so.
Grant writer.
Yeah.
grant
Yeah,
writer,
so-
huge.
And
Yeah.
the unfortunate thing is with communities such as ourselves, that it affects, is they're asking for upfront money. We don't have upfront
I
money.
know, I
We
know,
have it after,
I know,
not before.
I know. It's a real
And
challenge.
so, we think we can't go for the project because of that.
So we'll just keep asking.
Is there anything else? Interesting conversation. You get it all down, Bob?
I have, and I'm gonna ask you to sign it.
Thank you, Derek. Is there anything
Nice to
else
meet you.
for you, Lee?
No, that's for you as well.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now I'll get to there. Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Thank you very much.
If we get, good news, I'll shoot you an email.
By all means.
So.
Well, if it's bad news, you can shoot it to him too.
No, just wait till town meeting.
You'll be rewriting motions that same day.
You know my MO, Bertie.
Okay, next item on our agenda is voting on articles previously reviewed, and I think because of the day, I looked at my calendar, I thought, holy cow. We're supposed to be going to print this weekend.
Gotta vote.
Okay, Article 1, fund the FY '23 capital plan, as presented, making an assumption that we will have our free cash. So that's how we're gonna vote and qualify it. I'll either add a line to whomever wants to write this or ask them to make sure.
I move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? This would be on a qualification in our recommendation, depending on free cash. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. On Article 2, the transfer of free cash.
Move to recommend.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. There were no prior bills and deficits that came up. And we'll move on to Article 4, PEG access.
Move to recommend.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. Union contracts, qualifier, and none have been completed at this time, at the time of our,
Right. Are we gonna try to meet before town meeting?
this is a little different scenario, and I'll get to it later, but we're gonna be meeting.
Well, I'm only thinking because I personally would like to see the union contract, and I don't think, I'm not thinking there's anything wrong with them or
But they
anything
haven't
else.
yet voted on it, and that,
Right.
that assumes, if we made any kind of recommendation, we make an assumption that they are going to approve, and they haven't voted yet.
That's why I'm
so
asking if we were gonna
inappropriate.
meet before and kinda go
I'll
from
find
there.
out what the circumstances may be for a meeting for us. The selectmen oftentimes will vote, sometimes the planning board.
Yes, yeah.
And because we're at the Wareham Elementary, the facility is totally different to us, so I'm not sure what Margaret's gonna do for that. She has it laid out for how we're going to handle the cafetorium and our presence in that sense. But anything on the peripheral, I'll email her, ask if she's given that any thought.
Yeah.
And occasional reports will take place. We know that one is up as required, and that doesn't require a vote on our part. Article 15, which is the engineering clarifier upgrades. May I have a motion, please?
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. Article 16,
Move to recommend.
may I have a second, please?
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. Article 17, Smith Street lines.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. Article 18, rescind the article of Line 4's Main.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Any motions made and seconded? Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And Article 19, not force main from Narrows to WPCF.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. Article 20, amend and restated the agreement for CMW Regional Refuse Disposal District.
Move to recommend.
Yeah. Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? It was much larger in his explanation that the contract covers. I thought it was more or less making sure covering the retired people who were employed there. It is that and many other things. So I think I'll reprint it. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote, 7-0-0. We have Article 26, the boiler replacement project.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. Article 27, roof replacement.
Move to recommend.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It's a vote, 7-0-0. The other articles are all petitioned articles. And the selectmen heard the first one, obviously, because it affects the redevelopment authority, but there's no vote taken, and that's rather traditional. We don't have an opinion on them unless the committee wants to. Is there anyone interested in doing so?
Well, the only thing I would suggest, and we've done in the past, is just refer to town meeting. That would be our position.
Why don't you make a motion on Article 28, 29, and 30 to do so?
So moved.
Motion's
To
made.
refer to town meeting.
May I have a second, please?
Second.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? There being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, refer to town meeting. Okay, I put myself down as writing up the 26 and 27, which is the boiler and the roof. I've been asking for information from the school department, especially on the boiler, and I've asked to request information as to, A, what their budget is currently for this fiscal year for the high school to heat it, and secondly, what is the improvement that their study committee, which I'm certainly gave that information, the efficiency of the new boilers,
Yeah, I don't see it
and what the
here.
projected cost will be. Haven't heard, I emailed them directly.
You got
I was
this in
surprised he didn't have that information, he's the maintenance guy, they live for that stuff. They
What's the
know.
most obvious
Is
thing
this
you
supposed
ask?
to
Yeah.
answer the question? Because it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, no.
I was surprised that he didn't have that information right on the tip of his tongue, they usually know that, right?
Oh, I forgot my papers. Yoo-hoo, what was the meeting title?
I know.
Anyways,
Yeah,
Yeah, that was-
Or what's our committee?
yeah. But this investment absolutely needs.
That was very disappointing that I haven't had responses yet. And I've gotta have it by tomorrow, because I'm gonna put it out, and I'll give it to Norma to proof, and all of you to proofread.
Yeah.
And that's information I think that is important, and, oh well, we didn't get it, we just have to remember that. Any other concerns or questions?
I just want to say, give somebody a little credit. As Bernie knows, I've been kind of a pain about all the transfers the school department makes, and I've been following them. I don't know if anybody saw the school committee last week, but they had transfers, and it was for utilities. And it was a substantial amount of money, it was $70,000, give or take a few dollars. And I'm saying, what could this possibly be for? You know, just got me really thinking, and I watched the meeting anyways, and she had the nice transfer from this account to this account and all that. But it was, they ran into a little problem at the new school, I don't know, Selectman Slavin had heard all that. But they had to run the heating and the air conditioning during the summer because of humidity in the
Oh,
school.
wow.
Really?
For, you know, so the young lady, the new business manager, has done an excellent job putting the transfers out in the wise, which is all I asked for. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I just want to know. So far, this year, they've had, I think, 3 meetings with transfers, and they've had, you know, good reason. So I'm pleased to see that. You know, I think that stuff, as a finance committee, it would be nice to know. If I saw something come out of the same account all the time, I'd say, why is that? But it's,
She's bringing them to the school committee.
yep.
I believe those kinds of transfers used to occur in the background anyway.
I know they did. I'm
She
not, you know.
seems really effective, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm just glad to see that they're out there now. I mean, I think people have the right to see that and kind of know what's going on. I would have never have guessed they had a problem in the new school with humidity.
Well, it's,
You
and
have
it's
to be
a,
careful of transfers, you can only take a certain percentage of the budget.
Yeah, well, I understand all that.
And they used to ignore that. The other piece is the labor negotiations for the school. You're supposed to be a selectman as part of the group that votes. That's general law. They've ignored that for about 3 or 4 years. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be a check and balance.
Yeah, and it should be.
you can sit in the negotiations, but by law, you are mute.
Yep.
Totally.
That really goes against my
You
grain.
can't,
Is that possible?
No,
in discussing the school department budget for next year, and I can't believe here it is, haven't even had Halloween yet, and we're talking about 8 months from now, trying to project. Derek is not optimistic about our revenues. So as a result, there may be some serious situations with respect to the operating budgets for the entire town. And we're trying to put together now some kind of a chart, to measure the impact of certain actions. And teachers, administrative personnel, et cetera, to try and balance things out. We're skeleton crew in this building, and yet they have a plethora of people over on that other side. And we still think it's appropriate. It's not fair to the children, especially, and the teachers who are in the classrooms.
What do you mean by the other side?
Beg pardon?
Sorry, I missed the other side.
administrative?
school.
Administrative,
School,
Yeah,
school
the
versus
school,
town.
the other side,
yeah,
we used to say the other side of the parking lot,
yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, got it,
Still the
okay.
other side of the parking lot, just that parking.
Yeah,
Other on the corner,
okay,
other on the
that's what
corner.
I assumed, but I just didn't
But
want to
the
assume.
projections for revenue are not optimistic. Everything's, and it's hard to even guess as to what our costs are gonna be.
What do you mean by that?
Understatement.
Well, inflation's gonna kill us.
Oh,
Utility
yeah,
costs.
it's way up.
Yeah.
It's
And
not
that's
going
just
down.
the
yeah.
things that, are irrespective of what inflation is, our contracts are primarily settled, or we're paying based on what the existing contract had been.
Yeah.
And so that's one level you can project, but when, everything you have to purchase,
That's going up 8%, 9%.
oh my God,
10%.
yeah.
Every month, on top of the previous month, that was already up that percentage.
Gas is going back up again.
Yeah.
We just can't invest in putting solar on, what, we just don't have the wherewithal to do that. So
In fact, I had a guy stop at my house yesterday, trying to sell me solar.
don't buy from Sun Power.
You could buy it from a farm, you know, you can buy it from the farms, you
Don't buy it
don't even
away
have
from
to put
Sun
it
Power.
in your house.
We're with the AG right now
How would
on
that, we're on a contract with this, the town's on a contract,
Town has their own contracts.
Yeah. Everybody's on it.
Not the town, government, the town of Wareham has the
Yes, town of Wareham,
aggregation
No.
management,
yeah.
which locked us in for a 3-year period,
When is that period up?
another year and a half.
I didn't really want to focus just on solar, but it begs the question is, when you don't have the funds to invest, we struggle with that, and that's the real challenge and the heartbreak.
Data, we can't invest in solar, we have a contract with Eversource. At the time, it was great, and it was about 2-3 years ago, I think, is that
Sage Power was the original company.
Yeah, and
It's changed a lot.
it limits us to the advantage we can take for the efficiencies. And we're maxed out. Because it's like the new elementary school, that was specifically constructed such as having solar on the roof. Because all the utilities that you normally see on roof side are in a small building. We paid extra, and it got us an extra 3% in our reimbursement, because we went all that way, because the board of directors gave us 7.1, and we ended up with 7.4. 77.4, 70.4 reimbursement for building that, and that's all the solar on the top, so the roof's all ready to go. They just have to go out and lease the roof, which they can lease the parking lot too, and they keep that money, and that can defer their heat and light.
Sure.
The school also has, they've hired people with a CARES program and the Arpa program, more or less, for organizational expense, operation expenses, and staff, et cetera. It's gonna come back and bite all of us when the following year there's no money there. And they've been buying a lot of stuff through Amazon with no real controls. I made with Judy, we've gone after them on that to correct that, hopefully. And they also have certain personnel that are, I think they're paralegals, and they have them on their payroll rather than as a contract labor. So when they have them on our labor payroll, we then have to pay for the fringe benefits, et cetera, on top of all that. So we're trying, and hopefully the new school administration this year will try and work with us. I was very disappointed with the MSBA program and stuff, that they didn't tell us at all. And it surprised us in early September, hey, here's what we got coming for you. But we gotta find a way that it's the town of Wareham, and it doesn't matter what departments, they all have to talk to each other. Town administrator can't run the town this way. It's physically impossible.
Okay, back to our evening here. The first articles are the articles we reviewed with Derek this evening. Anybody care to volunteer to write up the recommendation?
I'll do it.
1, 2, and 3?
1, 2, there's nothing for 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's nothing really for 5, right?
Good night, everybody.
Okay,
Good night.
so there's nothing for 3. 4 is the housekeeping. 5 is that I'll just write in that the contracts haven't been approved as yet, and we'll make a change that evening. And so what else we got that haven't had? Okay. How about all the WPCF? Any volunteers?
I'll take the WPCF.
Oh, outstanding, man.
Good for you, man.
You win.
There's 5 of them.
Seemed to work out well last time, so.
And I'll step up to the plate and do 20. Okay, and let's see,
Boundaries of citizens.
26 and 27, I put myself in for that because I have all the details that Matt had given me. And I believe then we're good to go, and if we could have,
I'll have those to you tomorrow night.
if you could possibly,
Actually, I might even just finish it up tonight.
that's okay.
And feel free to red line, red mark mine, that was my first try, so, never done it before.
And you do got mine today too, isn't
Yes, and I put them in, they're in that one already, I believe. No, that, I printed that out before I saw your email. But everything's in there that I have. The only thing I haven't finished is Chairman's message. That is gonna highlight the difficulties we're having with the with the sewer issue, the school issue, not critically, but then explaining what are the issues we're gonna have to confront as they're upcoming.
Yeah. It's like kind of what Tom was talking about,
Yes.
to prepare, and I think that's really important, so people understand that.
Mm.
I mean, just what Guy said, if we don't do this, we could have a situation where we have to stop.
So
And if we can
unfortunate,
Mississippi.
Yeah, so I was talking to my brother-in-law about that, and he said that the place that we're in right now, that they could actually put us on the clock when we have to
Oh,
do
yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
Because
consent
we're,
order.
we are so far over, and
Yeah.
we've got the EPA involved now,
Right.
you know, that they could commit, and the fines could be astronomical.
You know,
Yeah, that's a distinct possibility. I mean, it's,
but if you don't, they talk about all these things, about the fines that are potentially there, et cetera. And I understand that they are. But I'm sure we're not the only system in equally as deep water, so to speak.
Well, that's
But,
what,
you know, at what point in time, or what point in the list are we supposedly, are we that close, are we just this close, and we're well within the ballpark, but we haven't found our seat yet, things of that nature. Not that I would wanna put it off, I just wanna understand the criticality of what we're doing, and that, yes, we should be doing it now because it'll pay off. Because if we go that route that someone has mentioned here, I know, once we cross over and the feds are taking care of it for us, they do things much more expensive than we do, and they do them their way.
oh, for sure.
And they
Yeah.
just send you the bill.
Yeah, Paul was telling me that, it's close to like 78% of the country.
Wow.
Yeah,
It's an enormous amount of communities are in the same boat that we're in.
well, all the plants,
It was,
they're all 50 years old.
it was because of the Clean Water Act in
Mhm.
in the late 60s, early 70s, and that's when all this money was put in and all these plants were built, and now they're all basically extinct. You know, they've gone past the usefulness and they need to be replaced. And that's why it's just kind of interesting, it's all just falling in dominoes, you know,
Yeah, 'cause
50 years
There's
later.
been talk of regionalization, and there's been talk of privatization,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure either alternative would be to our benefit, or change. Let's say the old purpose is to process this product.
Yeah.
What would change in regionalizing, what would change in privatizing, what changes just running what we do now?
The other
You might
cost,
get economies of scale, at least in regionalization,
Yeah.
Possibly.
possibly, but
But
that's,
the effect or the implementation of such a system, I mean, there have to be whole new plant built.
exactly, and yeah, the question is, could we build a whole new plant for several communities more cost effectively than whatever we're gonna have to do here?
Mhm.
well, yeah, and we also have the growth part, because this
Yeah.
plant is only to bring us
Just
net.
up to minimum.
Yeah, we got 53% of the community running. We couldn't be a seaside community without it.
Absolutely.
And the moratorium, as they indicated, which is, I want you to know, for those of us who've been around, that was a great plan. You know, it was really meeting all the criteria it had, and then all of a sudden, it's horrible. It'll barely last a year, you know, something of that nature. I mean, think, wait a minute.
Mhm.
But the transition occurred when the selectmen used to do it, and of course, they're political individuals, and they're not gonna raise the rates because they wanna be reelected, and that's the way the animals are. And so they moved it over to the commission, so they wanted to take the responsibility and then actually do things, and they fortunately, took them a couple of years to evaluate the process, to find out what we really needed, and now we're experiencing
Yeah.
the benefit of that change.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we got some good people over there, but still, costs a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you where I came from, and I hate to bring this up, and Bernie knows this, and the DPW person would come up for the new sewer rates, and he'd come in and say, I'll use 9%, for example. And the selectmen would sit there and debate this, and say, well, you know, they're elected, we're only gonna do a 4% increase. And that was just enough to not balance the budget, because now the rest, as Derek said, it's an enterprise account from the general fund.
Yeah.
So now what do? You know, I mean, how do you balance that? Do you start laying off cops and teachers and firemen to balance that because they don't want to go up with the rates? And that's basically what happens.
The choices.
Yeah.
Those are the choices you make,
You don't think about it, right? So I think about water every time I turn it on, right? I'm always, but I never think about, you know, the waste. And, you know, I think about it every day now, but I wasn't thinking about it.
Just wait till after Saturday.
Yeah.
I'm really gonna think about
Yeah.
it.
I mean,
So
and,
that's-
and I
I
told
think
somebody they
that it-
disagreed because I was MWRA in Stoughton. And I knew what my water bill was. My sewer bill was gonna be about 3 times my water bill.
Yeah.
Close. I wouldn't allow my kids to wash their cars in the yard.
Yeah.
Wouldn't water my lawn. I had the broadest lawn you could ever see. I ran a golf course, and people say, God, look at your lawn. I'm not using the water, because now I gotta pay for it to go out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, it saves water. If you're frugal, I'll say, I was cheap. So, but yeah, there's other, but it's just the way it is. I mean, there's no easy answer to this. It's,
78% of towns, wow.
One thing about our meeting, I don't run that structured, which is why, as you point out, you get an awful lot of information this way.
Yeah,
Hers is a structure like you have in a selectmen's meeting and all. But to move on, I've asked Judy 3 times now for the financial year-to-date. Anyway, the quarterly report, obviously they won't release the final report from FY '22 until it's been certified. I'll have to ask again. There's no minutes. Kelly's contract ran out October 1. And I had given her the discs at that point, and she checked it, so she has to fill out the, resubmit her proposal that she had for the first contract, which I'll talk to her tomorrow, and she'll get that in Monday. And so by the end of the week, we should be back online. They have someone who is doing minutes for other committees, but she's also doing minutes for other towns. And so I was talking with Sonia downstairs in the development office, and they feel she's overworked, overloaded. And Kelly's been doing our minutes for over 20 years. She knows the process. She knows how we work and the like. So I'd like to keep with her for the time being. And so we'll get her back online, and hopefully she'll get them done. She would have them done for us tonight, but it was the beginning of the week she realized that problem. Reminder of the tour. Let's see.
Was that 10 AM?
Yes. And we go to print this weekend. I'll give you all an opportunity, in the normal, I'll show her how we go through. 250 copies at around 100 pages, upwards around $3,000.
Bernie, do you think it will just be one night? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a lot.
this goes more than one night.
Yeah, there's just not a lot. Next spring may be different, but.
Yeah,
that's what I
this,
thought.
Margaret put out a message, she had checked the other locations. Potential one is the high school where we initially meet. They haven't done anything but put new bulbs in, but they can't bill them, they can't get good lighting. So it's poor TV lighting.
Yeah.
Those of us who are sitting on stage, we can't hear what's going on because everything is
Can't see.
pointed, it's a theater, so it's pointed towards the audience, and we're sitting behind the speakers. She checked the auditorium, the gymnasium, which we've used before when we did the Little Harbor. We could have used that, sound would be horrible in it though, but if we needed a second night, and she has to plan on it irrespective of what she knows is gonna happen, there's a ball game in there, so that's good. So she looked at the cafetorium, They can set it up for 400. The school has, personnel has volunteered, they'll clear all the tables out, set up the chairs for us. There's about 250 parking spaces in the parking lot. There is a handicap section for parking, and she'll accommodate the handicap section. As far as the stage is concerned, it won't accommodate all of us, so there'll be just herself, probably Rich Bowen, who is now, and coincidentally, when town meeting is in session, he works for the town meeting. When they adjourn, he goes back to the select. It's a little quirk, but he'll be there, Judy will be on one side of her, and I'll be on the other. How will, if there'll be microphones there, so that when you get to the motions, that your particular motion that you have, whether or not you'll be able to read it in, I'm not sure. If there's no mics, I'll have to read them all myself.
So we will sit somewhere up front.
You will be up front. You
Or
will be
not.
facing the audience,
Okay.
but you'll be down on the floor.
Okay,
So, yeah, so then we sit up front?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Normally we sit on the head table, but
okay.
Normally, it's non-hazardous duty, but then again, you never know the audience.
Yeah, you never know, right?
you never know. So what is the timing for proofing the report?
For what now, brief?
For proofing the
Oh,
report?
excuse me, I'm sorry, I hear briefing. I'll get this in tonight and tomorrow morning, and then it'll go out by lunchtime.
Okay.
And tomorrow is Friday, so it's good, we got that day and the following day. If I had it in, because they're usually very good at Staples, they're very familiar with my orders, I think I'm probably the largest one they get at that location, but anyway, they'll do it one day for me, and she, last time came in on, well, she paid overtime, of course, but she came in and finished the printing for me, so I had it Monday morning.
Okay.
And that's what we're compelled to do, and I drop it off around the building here so that the school selectmen get a copy, most of the department heads will grab a copy. Library gets some. That's about it. But yeah, fortunately, in the appendices is the 2 zoning bylaw change articles. There's a third one, but it's in the body of the article itself, so we don't have to reprint that. I'll reprint that contract. And the capital planning 5-year plan. Jerry has given me the latest one. Hopefully it's a draft now, because they're voting next week on it. And it's a draft when he submitted it, and I have to print it as such. I can't presume they're gonna vote.
Right. But changes could be noted.
Yeah, but this is not unusual, and as you heard me mention before, oftentimes the selectmen, planning board, even ourselves, will meet before town meeting and actually take votes of recommendation there for an article that'll change, or, you know, the planning board, is suddenly they'll approve something, and crying out loud, why didn't you meet last week?
Mhm.
Anything else?
So have, sort of hold that 5:36 or 6 o'clock maybe time before the meeting starts.
Usually around 6:30,
6:30.
town meeting starts at
Be
7,
just the union contracts.
that would be the only ones.
So meet there at 6 o'clock, is that the time?
I'll let you know.
But sort of be prepared for that.
We'll have to post the meeting.
But at least you got a pocket place at 6:30.
And also you can sign in.
That's
You
true.
can say,
And you
yeah.
don't have to get a
I always have a
line.
meeting posted, and Norma's been doing very well in that, and it's just so that there's something there like
Yeah,
Monday,
good.
Saturday.
Mhm.
No one's gonna complain about it, we're walking around that place, and it's very easy to do, because this past year, we were invited to go over to Upper Cape, and I declined to do so because I felt we should meet here because we're in Wareham, but all the other committees had met over there.
Hmm.
So instead, we went over and had lunch
We had
anyway.
a very
Yeah.
nice tour and
Yeah.
lunch.
Yeah, that's,
We got in trouble with the golf committee by that. We ended up, we went to the meeting with the conservative.
Conservation.
Conservation.
And, yeah, we got in trouble because we didn't actually post the meeting.
when they do a joint meeting for the school committee, when they do their presentation of their budget in around December 15th, I always post that meeting. So we're a quorum And we could take a vote if we wanted to,
Yeah.
because we're seriously considering level funding them. They've got it, working in a percentage increase, but if revenue's getting worse than my projections than they are, we just might go up and have to level fund them. I think in our in that meeting, depending upon if you want me to take that tack on it, when I talk with them, I mean, you're all able to talk with them, because I happen to be the chairman. And I tell them, oh, no, we'll accept nothing but less than nothing more than level funding. We did that one time, we were in a meeting, Jody was there, the chairman of the selectmen was there, myself, co-chair, and they had the school committee was the other side, chairman, super, and another member of the committee and all. We were at another issue, but we brought the budget up and we told them we were gonna start at level funding, and we'll work from there. I'm working up a chart now of their personnel, the amount of personnel they have, and I can go back about 5 years. And I'll tell them how many have changed, students down, personnel up. The number of administrative personnel has increased enormously.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a big part of that budget.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You know, speaking of the budget, and I had said this before, we should have had more guts last year when all the COVID money came up and all the staffing they're hiring with it, because it's gonna run out next year. Then they
Yeah,
have it.
the budget coming up is
So-
their last McDonald's.
Yeah, the last one, and it's a little under 2 million, I think, 1.8 or somewhere in that general
They
area.
spent more of it than they should have.
Well, whatever, but, and I understand the town administrator kind of made a verbal agreement to go up 3% and we'll start there, and I understand what you're saying. My attitude going in is gonna be, we'll go up 3% and then cut to 1.8. Wherever that should fall, it falls.
I'm thinking it-
That would cover the cost of what they're asking for a roof and, heating. The heating system, I think, is the perfect thing the COVID money was meant for. Yeah. You know, environmental things in the school, and that's falls, you know, totally into that category, so. There's a lot of big ticket items coming up in this town.
They have a lot more flexibility with that money.
I know they do.
than this side,
I know they do.
Which is
I know
horrible,
they do.
because we couldn't hire staff over here unless they were directly connected to the COVID, like
Yeah.
the police. Oh, you can hire police. No, you can hire police only if the detail they were on had anything to do with COVID, such as if there were lines out there for get your booster shot or get your shot to begin with, things of that nature, had to be directly related to COVID. On the municipal side. On the other side,
A lot of flexibility. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
motion made, seconded, all those in favor say aye, opposed, vote, thank you very much.
So, agenda for next Wednesday.